The town of Maplewood was the kind of place people wrote postcards about. Nestled between rolling hills and framed by pine forests that whispered in the autumn winds, it had long been a refuge from the chaos of the outside world. Main Street was dotted with mom-and-pop shops, a diner with red leather booths, and a single traffic light that blinked lazily at night. Life here was simple, predictable, and, above all, safe. That sense of safety was why Emily Hart never thought twice about working late shifts. Emily was 32, a registered nurse at Maplewood General Hospital. Patients adored her. She had that rare quality of making even the sick feel at ease. Her dark hair was always tied back neatly, her smile quick and genuine, her voice steady and reassuring. To children, she was the gentle nurse with the lollipops. To the elderly, she was a listener who never rushed. To her colleagues, she was dependable, the kind of nurse who covered shifts without complaint and still showed up the next day with a tray of muffins. Her younger sister, Anna, often teased her, "Maplewood should just give you the keys to the city already." And in many ways, Emily did feel like the heartbeat of the town. But on October 14th, Maplewood's heart skipped a beat and never fully recovered. That Thursday evening, Emily finished her shift just after 11:30 p.m. A co-worker remembered her waving goodbye, coat draped over one arm, saying she was looking forward to a quiet weekend. She stepped out into the cool autumn air, her car parked under the dim glow of the hospital lot. Nothing seemed unusual. By morning, though, everything was unusual. Anna woke to her phone buzzing repeatedly, missed calls, voicemails, text messages. Emily hadn't come home. At first, Anna assumed maybe her sister had stayed overnight at a friend's, or been called back to the hospital for an emergency. But by 8 a.m., when Emily's car was found abandoned on the side of Highway 7, alarm turned into panic. The car sat neatly on the shoulder, hazard lights off, keys missing. Her purse was still in the passenger seat. The doors were locked. There was no sign of a struggle, no broken glass, no blood, nothing. It looked less like a crime scene and more like someone had simply vanished. News spread through Maplewood faster than wildfire. By noon, volunteers were combing the nearby woods, shouting her name into the trees. The local pastor unlocked the church for vigils. Parents clutched their children's hands a little tighter, and for the first time in years, residents locked their doors. Sheriff Paul Denning held a press conference that afternoon. His jaw was tight, his voice grim but measured. "At this time, we are treating Nurse Hart's disappearance as suspicious. We are following all leads, and we are asking anyone who may have seen her or her vehicle last night to come forward." But behind the practiced calm of his words, the sheriff knew what everyone in Maplewood feared. Things like this didn't happen here. Not to Emily. At first, the investigation focused on the idea of a random act of violence. Highway 7 stretched far beyond Maplewood, connecting to interstates where strangers came and went. Maybe she had stopped for gas, or pulled over with car trouble, and the wrong person had found her. It was a theory that made sense, comforting, in a way. Evil had come from outside. But even in those first hours, there were details that didn't quite fit. A man driving home from the night shift at the paper mill swore he saw Emily's car parked on the roadside as early as 11:45 p.m., barely 15 minutes after she left the hospital. Another claimed he saw a figure standing near the car, but couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman. And then there was the gas station attendant who insisted Emily had come in just before midnight to buy a bottle of water. If true, that meant her car wasn't abandoned at 11:45 p.m., which meant someone was lying. Anna sat at her kitchen table that night, clutching Emily's favorite coffee mug as though it might tether her to reality. She replayed every conversation she'd had with her sister in recent weeks. Emily had seemed fine tired, maybe from back-to-back shifts, but nothing alarming. She hadn't mentioned being followed, hadn't spoken of fear. In fact, the last time they talked, Emily had been laughing about how the hospital's vending machine ate her dollar. The absence of warning signs was what made it unbearable. "People don't just disappear," Anna whispered, though she was alone in the kitchen. But in Maplewood, one just had. As the second day of searching began, doubts crept in. The sheriff's deputies scoured the woods. Dogs sniffed through ditches and riverbanks. Helicopters buzzed overhead. Still, no trace. By the end of that week, whispers spread through town like smoke. Some said she had run away from a secret life. Others insisted it was a jealous ex. A few even murmured about someone inside the hospital. Maplewood had always been a town where neighbors trusted each other. Now, suspicion slithered into every conversation. And quietly, behind closed doors, investigators began to wonder. What if Emily's disappearance wasn't a random act at all? What if the truth was far closer to home than anyone dared to admit? The second morning after Emily Hart vanished, Maplewood awoke to a silence that felt unnatural. Usually, the town stirred with the easy rhythm of routine, the clatter of dishes at Dolene's diner, the rustle of newspapers at the corner store, the buzz of chainsaws from men trimming back autumn's fallen branches. But that Saturday, the quiet was heavy, as though the town itself was holding its breath. The sheriff's office had organized an official search party at dawn. Volunteers poured into the parking lot of the Methodist church. Farmers in flannel jackets, teachers clutching thermoses, teenagers still rubbing sleep from their eyes. Everyone signed their names on a clipboard, accepted a fluorescent vest, and listened grimly as Sheriff Denning gave his instructions. "We'll sweep the east side of the pines first," he said, pointing to the thick woods that bordered Highway 7. "Stay in pairs. If you find anything, do not touch it. Flag it and call it in." The woods swallowed them quickly. The forest near Maplewood wasn't menacing in the daylight. It was the kind of place where kids played hide-and-seek, where families hiked on weekends. But under the circumstances, every rustle of leaves, every shadow beneath the branches seemed ominous. The pines stood tall and silent, their needles carpeting the ground in soft layers that muffled footsteps. "Emily," voices echoed across the ridges. "Emily, can you hear us?" Dogs barked as handlers tugged them along winding deer trails. Searchers called her name again and again, their voices cracking not from exhaustion but from the desperation of needing a reply. By mid-morning, they found items worth noting. A hair tie snagged on a branch, a crumpled grocery receipt, footprints leading toward a creek. But each clue dissolved into nothing. The hair tie belonged to a teenager who'd admitted she'd been walking her dog the night before. The receipt was weeks old. The footprints? Hunters. Still, the search went on. At the gas station just a mile from where Emily's car had been found, detectives were reviewing surveillance footage. The attendant, a young man named Kyle, had already insisted he'd seen Emily around midnight. "She bought a bottle of water," he repeated for the third time, tapping his fingers nervously on the counter. "Paid in cash. She was alone." But the footage told a different story. The timestamp at 11:56 p.m. showed the familiar outline of Emily, dark ponytail, hospital scrubs beneath her coat, stepping into the store. She walked directly to the cooler, grabbed a bottle of water, then approached the register. Nothing unusual. What unsettled detectives came after? As Emily exited, a figure appeared at the edge of the camera frame. Male, tall, wearing a hooded sweatshirt. He lingered by the door for a few seconds before following her out. The footage ended there. Back in the woods, Anna joined the search herself. She walked with two friends, calling her sister's name into the trees until her throat burned. Every snapped twig made her whip around, hoping for movement, for Emily's voice, for anything. But what Anna found instead was something more haunting. Near a shallow ditch, half buried in leaves, lay a single blue latex glove the kind nurses wore. Her knees gave out as she stared at it. "It's hers," she whispered. Deputies quickly swarmed the spot, marking it with tape and photographing it from every angle. Yet even that discovery raised more questions than answers. The glove could have been Emily's. She carried extras in her bag, but there was no proof. It could just as easily have blown from the hospital trash bins. Hope turned into confusion, and confusion into dread. By the third day, frustration simmered. Searchers began to wonder aloud whether Emily was even in the woods at all. Why had her car been abandoned so close to the highway, yet no sign of struggle appeared inside? Some locals whispered that she must have known her abductor. Emily wouldn't pull over for just anyone. One woman muttered at the diner. She must have trusted them. That theory unsettled everyone more than the idea of a random drifter. If she had known the person, it meant the danger wasn't passing through, it lived among them. Investigators pressed harder into her personal life. They interviewed co-workers, friends, former boyfriends. What they uncovered was less the portrait of a flawless angel and more the picture of a complicated woman whose kindness sometimes concealed private burdens. Emily had recently ended a long relationship with a local paramedic named Daniel Walsh. Their breakup, by all accounts, hadn't been amicable. He was possessive, one nurse confided, always asking where she was, who she was with. Then there was the matter of Dr. Mitchell, the married physician Emily often worked late shifts with. Several nurses noted that the two seemed unusually close. One even admitted she'd overheard a heated conversation between them in the supply room just a week before Emily disappeared. And then came the letters. During a search of Emily's apartment, detectives found 3 envelopes tucked into the bottom drawer of her nightstand. The handwriting was shaky, uneven, almost frantic. Each letter carried the same message in different words: "Stop what you're doing. You don't know what you've gotten yourself into. I'm watching." They were unsigned. The discovery sent ripples through the investigation. What had Emily gotten herself into? Why hadn't she told anyone? Anna sat in the sheriff's office, clutching the letters with trembling hands. "She didn't tell me any of this," she said softly. "She told me everything, except this." Sheriff Denning leaned forward. "Think carefully, Anna. Did she ever mention anyone who frightened her? Anyone who might want to harm her?" Anna shook her head. "No. But the past few weeks, she did seem distracted. Like something was weighing on her." The sheriff's eyes darkened. Whatever it was, it may have cost her more than we thought. On the 5th night, the search of the woods was scaled back. Volunteers were exhausted, and no new leads had surfaced. The optimism of the first day had soured into frustration. Some residents grew angry, blaming the sheriff's office for not doing enough. Others avoided eye contact altogether, afraid of what the truth might reveal. Maplewood no longer felt safe. Porch lights burned all night. Mothers refused to let their children walk to school alone. The Pines, once a place of childhood games and Sunday hikes, now seemed cursed. And in that silence, suspicion bloomed. Neighbors who once greeted each other warmly now glanced sideways, asking silently, "Could it be you?" The town that had once trusted blindly was learning a terrible lesson. Sometimes the danger wasn't in the shadows of the forest, but in the familiar faces they saw every day. When Emily Hart vanished, Maplewood initially painted her as the perfect victim. She was the nurse who stayed late to comfort frightened children, the daughter who visited her father's grave every Sunday, the neighbor who brought casseroles to new mothers. But as investigators pressed deeper into her personal life, that polished image began to splinter. It wasn't that Emily was dishonest. It was that she was human, complicated, private, and carrying burdens she had chosen not to share with the town that adored her. Detectives began their inquiry at St. Luke's Hospital, where Emily worked the night shift. In a cramped break room that smelled faintly of burnt coffee, they interviewed her co-workers one by one. Nurse Linda Dawson, who had shared countless shifts with Emily, leaned back in her chair, frowning as she spoke. She was different lately, Linda admitted. More distracted. Sometimes I'd find her standing in the supply closet, just staring at the shelves. When I asked if she was okay, she'd smile and say she was fine. But she wasn't fine. You could see it in her eyes. What do you mean? Detective Marquez pressed. Linda hesitated, like she was scared of something. Or someone. Rumors had already been swirling about her connection to Dr. Peter Mitchell, a respected but married physician. When questioned, Dr. Mitchell denied any impropriety, though his flushed face and darting eyes betrayed discomfort. Emily was a dedicated nurse. That's all, he said, folding his hands tightly on the desk. Yes, we were close, we worked long hours together. But there was nothing inappropriate. Detectives weren't convinced. Another nurse revealed she had overheard the two arguing in hushed voices days before Emily disappeared. Something about promises and not backing out now. It wasn't proof of an affair, but it was proof that Emily had secrets and that Dr. Mitchell might be entangled in them. Meanwhile, Emily's sister Anna was sorting through her apartment under police supervision, hoping for clues. In the small bedroom, she opened Emily's dresser drawers, her hands trembling with equal parts grief and fear. That's when she found the journal. It wasn't hidden, just tucked beneath a stack of folded sweaters. The leather cover was worn, the edges frayed from years of use. Anna hesitated before opening it, as though breaking a sacred boundary. But curiosity and desperation won. The entries began innocently enough. Notes about exhausting shifts at the hospital, gratitude for small joys, sketches of flowers she'd seen on her walks. But as Anna flipped forward, the tone darkened. He won't leave me alone. Every time I think it's over, he finds another way to remind me. I'm starting to wonder if I'll ever be free. I can't tell Anna. She already worries too much. But I'm scared. I've never felt this watched before. If anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. Anna's chest tightened as she read those words. She clutched the journal to her chest, her tears smearing the ink. Emily had been in danger and she'd known it. Investigators now faced a troubling dilemma. Who was the he in Emily's journal? Some suspected her ex-boyfriend, Daniel Walsh, the paramedic she'd broken up with months earlier. By all accounts, Daniel had struggled with the split. He'd shown up uninvited at her apartment once, demanding she reconsider. Friends described him as possessive, quick to anger when Emily tried to assert independence. When detectives questioned him, Daniel was defensive. I loved her, he snapped, his jaw tightening. But she didn't want me anymore. That's her choice. I accepted that. Did you? Detective Marquez asked quietly. Daniel slammed his fist on the table. You think I hurt her? You're out of your damn mind. His outburst didn't prove guilt, but it didn't ease suspicions either. Meanwhile, the letters found in Emily's drawer deepened the mystery. Forensic analysis confirmed they were written by hand, not printed. The handwriting didn't match Daniel's, nor did it match Dr. Mitchell's. It belonged to someone else entirely, someone the police hadn't yet identified. But the content was chilling. Stop what you're doing. You don't know what you've gotten yourself into. I'm watching. Detectives began to wonder if Emily had stumbled onto something bigger than a personal conflict. Something she wasn't meant to see. For Anna, the revelations were like salt in an open wound. Her sister hadn't confided in her. Instead, Emily had carried her fears in silence, writing them into a journal rather than speaking them aloud. Anna replayed every recent conversation in her mind, searching for hidden meanings. The night before she vanished, Emily had said something odd over the phone. I need to make things right. At the time, Anna thought she meant patching things up with a friend, or maybe working through her breakup. Now, those words haunted her. What had Emily meant by making things right? The town of Maplewood, too, began to buzz with speculation. At the grocery store, whispers floated between aisles. At church, prayers carried an undercurrent of unease. Everyone had a theory, and each theory implicated someone familiar. Some swore Daniel was guilty. Men like that don't let go easy. Others pointed to Dr. Mitchell. You think a man in his position wants a scandal? He'd do anything to keep her quiet. A few even suggested Emily had run away, unable to face whatever storm was brewing. But those who knew her best rejected the idea. Emily loved her town, her family, her patients. She wouldn't vanish by choice. On the 7th day of the investigation, detectives received a call that shifted everything. A hiker had been walking near the quarry, a mile past the pines where Emily's car was found, when he noticed something unusual. A scarf snagged on a branch, fluttering in the wind. It was pale blue, the exact color Emily's sister swore she had been wearing the night she disappeared. The search party moved quickly. Deputies fanned out across the quarry, flashlights cutting through the growing dusk. For hours, they combed the rocky terrain. Finally, near the edge of the quarry pit, one deputy's beam landed on something half buried in the dirt. It wasn't Emily, but it was her phone. Cracked, mud-stained, still turned on. And on the screen, one unsent text message glowed. Anna, if anything happens to me, it's because of. The message ended there. The phone lay inside an evidence bag on the sterile table of the Maplewood police station. Its once sleek case was now chipped and mud-streaked, the screen spiderwebbed with cracks. But for detectives Marquez and O'Connor, it was more valuable than gold. Phones didn't just hold contacts and messages, they held lives. And in Emily Hart's case, her life might explain her death. The tech specialist, a quiet man named Harris, carefully connected the device to a forensic computer. The screen flickered to life, and for the first time in days, Emily's digital voice returned. "There's a lot here," Harris murmured, scrolling through messages. Texts, emails, voicemails. Some deleted. "Start with the drafts," Marquez instructed, leaning forward. Sure enough, the last unsent message glowed on the screen. "Anna, if anything happens to me, it's because of..." But the message cut off mid-sentence. No name, no clue. Just silence where truth should have been. O'Connor rubbed his forehead. She was trying to warn her sister. Something spooked her before she could finish. Then came the text threads. Most were mundane reminders about groceries, messages from co-workers, jokes exchanged with Anna. But one thread stood out. The number was unsaved, listed only as unknown. The texts were short, chilling. "You promised. Don't forget who's in control. End this before it's too late." Emily's responses were desperate, fragmented. "Please, just leave me alone. I can't do this anymore. Why are you doing this?" Marquez felt a cold shiver run down her spine. "This isn't random," she said quietly. "This is targeted. Whoever this is, they had power over her." But the deeper Harris dug, the stranger things became. There were multiple calls to an unlisted number late at night, always around midnight, always under a minute long. No voicemails, no explanations. "Burner phone," O'Connor suggested. "Most likely," Harris confirmed. "Someone who didn't want to be traced." Emails revealed yet another side of Emily. One, sent to a friend from nursing school, hinted at something bigger. "I wish I could tell you everything, but it's not safe. I've seen things I shouldn't have. If I disappear, know it wasn't by choice." Marquez exchanged a grim look with her partner. What exactly did she see? Meanwhile, Anna sat in the corner of the station, clutching a styrofoam cup of untouched coffee. When detectives showed her the texts, her face crumpled. "She never told me," Anna whispered. "She never said she was scared like this. Why would she keep it all inside?" "Maybe she was trying to protect you," Marquez said gently. Anna shook her head. "Or maybe she thought no one would believe her." The journal, the texts, the emails, all painted a picture of a woman trapped in something dangerous. But it wasn't until Harris restored a set of deleted voicemails that the case shifted again. The first was static-filled, but a male voice could be heard. "You think you can walk away from this? You can't. You're already in too deep." The second was worse. "If you don't do what I say, everyone will know the truth about you. About what you've done." Anna gasped when she heard it. "That's not Daniel. That's not Dr. Mitchell either. I don't recognize that voice at all." Which meant there was someone else, someone completely off the police radar. 4 days, detectives chased leads. They tracked the burner number, but it bounced across towers, leaving no clear location. They interviewed hospital staff again, this time digging into records of prescription medications, missing supplies, and late-night shifts. Then came the discovery that rocked the case. In the hospital's narcotics log, Detective Marquez noticed irregularities, small amounts of opioids missing, spread across several weeks. The records had been signed off by Emily. Either she was stealing, O'Connor muttered, or someone was forcing her to cover it up. Marquez stared at the files, her stomach tightening. Emily, the beloved nurse, caught in a drug diversion scheme? It seemed impossible. And yet the threats, the fear, the secrecy, it all fit. When they brought the evidence to Anna, she broke down. She would never steal. Never. But if someone threatened her, if they said they'd ruin her career, her reputation, Anna wiped her tears. She'd keep quiet. She'd protect everyone else before herself. It made sense. Emily had uncovered a drug ring at the hospital. Someone high up, maybe even a doctor, had coerced her into silence. And when she finally refused to play along, she vanished. The theory gained weight when detectives received a tip from an anonymous caller. "I know about Emily Hart," the caller said, his voice low and hurried. "She was asking too many questions about the meds. She wasn't supposed to." "Who are you?" Marquez demanded. But the line went dead. The pressure on the investigation intensified. Local news ran nightly updates, reporters camped outside the station, and the town's grief sharpened into anger. People wanted answers. They wanted someone to blame. Daniel Walsh, Emily's ex, was brought back in for more questioning. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, his composure cracked. "Look, I argued with her. I was jealous, okay? But I didn't kill her. You think I'd hurt her after everything? No. She told me she was scared. She said someone at the hospital was making her do things she didn't want to do." For the first time, his words rang true. The investigation had officially turned. Emily's disappearance was no longer about a jealous ex or a secret romance. It was about corruption, drugs, and someone desperate to keep their empire hidden. The question now wasn't whether Emily had enemies. It was how far they were willing to go to silence her. The first whispers started at the diner. Maplewood's only 24-hour spot was the kind of place where rumors spread faster than coffee refills. And on that rainy Thursday morning, the gossip was scorching. "They say Emily was caught up in drugs at the hospital." "No way. Not Emily Hart." "Well, that's what I heard from my cousin's neighbor. Narcotics went missing, and her name's on the papers." By noon, half the town believed it. By nightfall, it was on the evening news. Detective Marquez sat in her cruiser outside the hospital, watching the glow of the television inside a patient's room through the window. She didn't need to hear the broadcast to know what it said. "Beloved nurse linked to missing narcotics." The headline hit her like a punch. Emily, the woman whose disappearance had shaken the town, was now being painted as a criminal. She slammed her hand against the steering wheel. "Damn it. This isn't what we need." But controlling the narrative was impossible. Maplewood was small, but the story was big. And once the word drugs was attached to Emily's name, sympathy turned into suspicion. At the grocery store, Anna overheard the whispers. She probably ran off. Maybe she wasn't as innocent as she looked. She must have gotten mixed up with the wrong people. Anna wanted to scream. Instead, she gripped her basket until her knuckles turned white. "She's my sister," she muttered under her breath. "She's not what you think." But Maplewood wasn't listening anymore. Inside the hospital, tensions ran higher than ever. Nurses avoided eye contact with reporters at the entrance. Doctors whispered in hallways. Patients' families demanded answers. Dr. Mitchell, the hospital administrator, called an emergency staff meeting. His voice was calm, but his eyes darted nervously. "We need to remain professional. The police are conducting an investigation, and until it's complete, speculation helps no one." "Speculation?" one nurse snapped. "Emily's missing, and now they're saying she stole drugs. If someone here is involved, we deserve to know." Murmurs rippled across the room. The staff's unity was crumbling. Meanwhile, Detective O'Connor tracked down the anonymous tip that had hinted at corruption. The call had come from a payphone outside a truck stop 20 miles away. Security footage was grainy, but it showed a figure in scrubs, head down, disappearing into the night. "Someone inside the hospital," O'Connor said grimly. "Someone who knows more than they're willing to admit." The case files on Marquez's desk grew thicker by the day. But so did the doubts. The texts from the unknown number. The deleted voicemails. The drug discrepancies. It all pointed to a dangerous network inside Maplewood General. But who was pulling the strings? She flipped through Emily's phone records again and noticed something odd. The midnight calls weren't just random, they always happened after Emily's shifts. Someone had been watching her schedule. "Inside job," she whispered. The pressure weighed heavily on Anna. She couldn't walk through town without seeing missing posters peeling on lampposts, Emily's smiling face now a cruel reminder of how quickly hope was fading. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, Emily's journal open in front of her. Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. Then, tucked between entries about mundane things, recipes, notes about patients, reminders to call their mother, she found something that made her heart stop. A list. Names. Dates. Numbers. And at the top of the page, circled twice, Mitchell, 1202, 3 boxes. Anna's stomach dropped. Dr. Mitchell. The man who had stood before the staff insisting on professionalism. The man who claimed to be leading the hospital through crisis. Her hands shook as she dialed Marquez. When the detectives saw the journal entry, the air in the room seemed to thicken. This doesn't prove he's guilty, O'Connor cautioned, but it ties him to the drugs. And it means Emily knew, Marquez added. If she wrote this down, she was tracking it. She wasn't stealing, she was documenting. And someone realized she was getting too close, O'Connor finished. The implication hung heavy between them. That night, as rain lashed against the windows of the police station, a new voicemail arrived on the tip line. The voice was male, hurried, terrified. You're looking at the wrong person. Mitchell's just a cover. The one you need to worry about is higher up. Much higher. Emily found out. And now, the line went dead. Detective Marquez stared at the blinking cursor on the transcription screen, replaying the voicemail over and over. Mitchell's just a cover. The one you need to worry about is higher up. Much higher. It wasn't just the words that bothered her. It was the tone. The man's fear was raw, desperate, like someone who knew he was already in too deep. O'Connor leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Could be a hoax. Marquez shook her head. No. That voice wasn't playing around. He was terrified. But terrified of who? The next morning, Anna stopped by the police station clutching Emily's journal to her chest like a lifeline. Detective, she whispered urgently, if Mitchell's involved, then Emily wasn't safe. And if she wasn't safe, I'm not either. Marquez softened her voice. Anna, do you remember if Emily ever mentioned anyone? Above Mitchell? Someone she was scared of? Anna frowned, sifting through memories. She did once. Said there was someone at the hospital she couldn't trust. But she never said a name. Just she hesitated, lowering her voice that he was untouchable. Inside Maplewood General, rumors turned into fractures. Nurses whispered in stairwells. Doctors eyed each other with suspicion. And in the center of it all, Dr. Mitchell remained calm, too calm. At a late-night stakeout, O'Connor muttered, Guy walks around like he's got nothing to fear. Either he's innocent, or he's protected. Marquez didn't answer. She was watching Mitchell through the binoculars as he left the hospital parking lot, not heading home, but toward the outskirts of town. They tailed him to an abandoned warehouse, its windows boarded, its lot cracked with weeds. From the shadows, they saw Mitchell knock twice on a rusted metal door. A figure stepped out, a man in a suit, tall, broad-shouldered, his presence commanding even in the darkness. The two exchanged a briefcase, the gesture smooth, practiced. Marquez's pulse quickened. That's not a drug handoff. That's business. Which means Mitchell isn't the boss, O'Connor said grimly. He's the errand boy. The next day, Anna found herself cornered at the grocery store by Mrs. Turner, an old family friend. I shouldn't say this, Mrs. Turner whispered, glancing around nervously. But your sister, she was asking questions about the board of trustees. She came by the library a few weeks back, digging through records about hospital funding, donations, all that boring stuff. But she looked scared, Anna. Real scared. Anna's heart sank. The untouchable Emily had mentioned it wasn't just Mitchell. It was someone with power, someone who controlled the money, the politics, the very backbone of Maplewood. That evening, Marquez and O'Connor pulled the hospital's financial records. Millions in donations flowed in from shell companies, routed through accounts with no clear owners. On paper, everything looked legitimate. But hidden in the ledgers were irregular transfers, money quietly siphoned into offshore accounts. "This isn't just drug theft," Marquez murmured. "This is organized crime." "Which means," O'Connor added, Emily stumbled onto something she was never supposed to see. Anna's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging or you'll end up like her." Her hands went ice cold. She rushed to the police station, shoving the phone into Marquez's hands. "They are watching me now." Marquez felt a chill ripple down her spine. The enemy wasn't hiding anymore. They were warning. 2 days later, Dr. Mitchell was found dead in his car, slumped over the steering wheel with a bullet in his head. The official report called it suicide. But the gun was wiped clean, and there were no prints. "Clean-up job," O'Connor muttered at the crime scene. Whoever he was working for just cut their ties. Marquez's jaw tightened. "And sent us a message." Back in her apartment that night, Marquez pored over Emily's journal again, flipping past the mundane entries until she noticed something she hadn't before. Scribbled faintly in the margin of one page was a single word. Lombard. Her breath caught. That name wasn't in the hospital staff directory, but she'd heard it whispered before in connection with Maplewood's wealthiest families. She picked up the phone and called O'Connor. "I think I just found our untouchable." Across town, in a dimly lit office, Richard Lombard sat behind his mahogany desk, a glass of bourbon in hand. On the wall behind him hung photographs of ribbon cuttings, charity galas, political handshakes. To Maplewood, he was a philanthropist. But as he poured himself another drink, he muttered to his associate, "They're sniffing too close. Make sure they understand Emily Hart wasn't the first to disappear. And she won't be the last." The Lombard estate loomed over Maplewood like a fortress. Perched high on the hill, its sprawling gardens and iron gates whispered of wealth, privilege, and power. To the public, Richard Lombard was Maplewood's golden son, a benefactor who had poured millions into hospitals, schools, and charities. But to Marquez, he was something else entirely. She sat in her cruiser at the edge of the estate's long driveway, binoculars fixed on the mansion. Guards patrolled the grounds. A black SUV came and went, tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside. It wasn't just a home, it was a compound. "Guy's untouchable," O'Connor muttered beside her. "Money like that buys silence." Marquez lowered the binoculars. "Not forever." Inside the mansion, Lombard swirled his bourbon lazily, listening to his associate rattle off details about the investigation. "The police are sniffing around Mitchell's death. They're connecting dots, sir." Lombard smirked. "Dots are harmless until they form a picture. As long as they're guessing, we're fine." "And the nurse?" For a brief moment, his smile faltered. She should have stayed quiet. Pity. She had potential. He set the glass down with a sharp clink. "If they keep pushing, make sure they learn the price of curiosity." Anna couldn't shake the text message she'd received. "Stop digging or you'll end up like her." That night, she sat at her kitchen table with Emily's journal spread open, a candle flickering beside her. Her sister's handwriting danced across the pages, full of mundane details, patient notes, grocery lists until the entries darkened. Mentions of strange transactions, of boxes disappearing, of Lombard's name whispered when no one thought she was listening. Anna's tears fell on the page. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "Why did you carry this alone?" Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. "You've been warned. Last chance." She dropped the phone in terror. They weren't bluffing. At the precinct, Marquez studied Emily's journal, tracing her finger over the word Lombard scrawled in the margin. Why write it down in a place she knew someone could find it? O'Connor asked. "Because she wanted it found," Marquez replied. She knew she was in danger. This journal is a trail of breadcrumbs. "And Lombard's the wolf at the end of it," O'Connor muttered. The detectives brought their suspicions to the district attorney, but the response was chilling. "Richard Lombard is a respected member of this community," the DA said stiffly. "Without hard evidence, we don't touch him." Marquez leaned forward. "With all due respect, sir, hard evidence has a way of disappearing around Lombard. We wait too long, and Anna Hart will be next." The DA's silence was answer enough. Meanwhile, Anna began noticing strange things. A car idling outside her house late at night. Footsteps behind her as she walked home. Once, she swore she saw a figure standing at the edge of the woods, watching. She reported it to Marquez, who immediately arranged a patrol car near her home. Anna, Marquez said gently, I need you to understand Lombard plays a long game. He doesn't threaten unless he means it. But we're not going to let him scare you into silence. Anna nodded, though her trembling hands betrayed her fear. The break came unexpectedly. A hospital accountant, nervous and pale, slipped into Marquez's office late one evening. I can't stay long, the man whispered, glancing over his shoulder. I handled some of the transfers. The money doesn't add up. Lombard's foundation, his laundering through it. And Emily, she confronted me about it. She said she was going to report him. Why come forward now? Marquez asked. The accountant's eyes darted toward the window. Because I don't want to end up like Mitchell. Or her. Before Marquez could ask more, he shoved a flash drive into her hand and fled. The flash drive was a goldmine: bank records, email exchanges, invoices tied directly to Lombard's foundation. Proof that his empire wasn't philanthropy, but corruption. But with proof came danger. That night, Marquez received a call from an unknown number. You don't know who you're dealing with, the voice drawled, calm, collected. Drop this case, detective. Go back to your city crime scenes. This is Maplewood. We take care of our own. Then came the sound of ice clinking in a glass. Bourbon. The line went dead. Anna sat in her sister's room that night, the journal in her lap. Her eyes landed on one final, haunting entry. If anything happens to me, it won't be random. Tell Anna to trust no one. Especially the ones everyone else trusts. Her breath caught. Emily had known. Anna whispered into the silence. I won't stop, Emily. I'll finish what you started. In the shadows of Maplewood, Richard Lombard raised his glass in a quiet toast. To the curious nurse, he said softly, almost fondly. And to anyone else foolish enough to follow her path. The fire crackled. The bourbon burned. And somewhere, the walls of his empire remained strong, untouched, unbroken, and deadly to anyone who dared to climb them. The Maplewood Gazette was a modest building tucked between a bakery and a hardware store on Main Street. Its editor, Margaret Hayes, was known for her no-nonsense attitude and stubborn streak. She had once taken on a corrupt mayor and lived to tell the tale. Anna sat across from her now, Emily's journal open on the desk between them. Margaret read silently, her brow furrowed deeper with every page. When she finally looked up, her eyes were sharp. Do you understand what you're handing me? Margaret asked. Anna's voice shook. I understand that my sister was killed because of what she knew. And I understand that the people who should be protecting us are too afraid to act. So yes, I understand. Margaret leaned back in her chair, tapping the journal with a manicured nail. If I print this, Lombard will come after me. After you. After anyone tied to it. Anna swallowed hard. He already is. Detective Marquez wasn't happy when she found out. You went to the press? She snapped, pacing Anna's living room. Do you realize what you've just done? Lombard thrives in the shadows. You just dragged him into the light, and he's going to fight back. Anna's chin lifted. Good. Let him. I'm done living in fear. Emily wanted the truth out there, and I'm not going to hide. Marquez pinched the bridge of her nose. Anna, courage is admirable. But courage without backup is suicide. At least let me position a unit near the Gazette once this hits print. The story broke on a rainy Thursday morning. Bold black letters screamed across the Gazette's front page. Local nurse feared murdered. Evidence points to Maplewood's wealthiest citizen. Copies flew off the stands. By noon, the article had spread across social media, whispered in cafes, shared at the hospital, and debated at the diner counter. The town buzzed with outrage, disbelief, and fear. Some hailed Anna as brave. Others warned her she had signed her own death warrant. And Richard Lombard? He smiled for the cameras. Standing on the steps of the courthouse, he held a press conference. Dressed immaculately in a navy suit, he spoke with polished ease. "These accusations are baseless," he said smoothly. "A grieving sister has been manipulated by conspiracy theories. I have nothing but sympathy for the Hart family. And I will not allow my reputation, or my foundation's good work to be tarnished by lies." Flashes from cameras lit up his face. His smile never faltered. That night, Margaret Hayes's office window shattered under the crack of a gunshot. The bullet lodged in her filing cabinet, inches from where she had been sitting. Police swarmed the scene, but Lombard's men had already melted into the night. Marquez stood outside the Gazette, fury boiling in her chest. She turned to Margaret, who was shaken but unbroken. "This is what happens when you poke the lion," Margaret muttered, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands. "No," Marquez corrected, her jaw tight. "This is what happens when a lion thinks he owns the cage. He's scared. That's why he's lashing out." Anna, meanwhile, was drowning in fear. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with anonymous calls and texts. "You should have kept your mouth shut. Next time, it won't be your editor. You're not safe anywhere." She tried to sleep, but every creak of the house made her jump. Every shadow felt like an intruder. One night, she jolted awake to the sound of footsteps outside her bedroom window. By the time she grabbed the phone and called Marquez, the footsteps were gone. Only the faint smell of cigarette smoke lingered beneath the windowsill. At the precinct, Marquez gathered her team. Lombard's escalated. He's sending a message. That means he's worried, and that means we've got leverage. We need to move before he tightens the noose. "But the DA won't authorize a warrant without direct evidence," O'Connor pointed out. Marquez slammed Emily's journal down on the table. "This is evidence. The flash drive is evidence. And the threats alone are enough to prove obstruction. We need to lean on the accountant again. Make him testify before Lombard silences him too." Back at the estate, Lombard poured himself another bourbon. His assistant stood nervously by the fireplace. "The story's spreading faster than we expected. People are talking. If more come forward, then we remind them what happens to people who forget their place," Lombard interrupted smoothly. He raised his glass. "Fear is the strongest currency in Maplewood. And I'm still the richest man in town." He took a slow sip, eyes gleaming. "But let them play their little game. The higher they climb, the harder they'll fall." For Anna, the breaking point came 2 nights later. She came home to find her front door ajar, her living room ransacked. On the wall, scrawled in red spray paint, were 3 chilling words. "Silence her too." Anna fell to her knees, sobbing, clutching Emily's journal to her chest. She wasn't just fighting for her sister anymore. She was fighting for her own life. And as she looked at the vandalized wall, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Lombard wouldn't stop until one of them was dead. Detective Marquez knew the moment she saw Anna's vandalized wall that waiting was no longer an option. Lombard had crossed a line. Every hour Anna remained in Maplewood without protection was another chance for his men to silence her. At the precinct, Marquez gathered her team around the strategy board. Emily's photo stared back at them, alongside mugshots of Lombard's known associates, drivers, enforcers, fixers. "We don't have a smoking gun yet," Marquez admitted. "But Lombard's gotten sloppy. He's scared, which means he'll make mistakes. We're going to give him that chance." O'Connor raised an eyebrow. "You're talking about a sting?" Marquez nodded. "Exactly. We'll use Anna as bait." Anna, who sat quietly at the corner of the room, stiffened. "Excuse me." "You've already drawn his attention," Marquez explained gently. "If we can stage a situation that forces Lombard's men to move, we'll catch them in the act. With evidence. Enough to bring him down." Anna's pulse quickened. "You're asking me to risk my life?" Marquez met her gaze. "I'm asking you to finish what your sister started." The plan was simple on paper, dangerous in execution. Margaret Hayes at the Gazette would publish a follow-up story, one that teased new evidence implicating Lombard more directly. The article would claim Anna had uncovered more files from Emily's hidden cache. Anna would then host a late-night meeting at the Maplewood Public Library to hand the supposed files over to state investigators. Only the meeting was a fabrication. The investigators were undercover officers. All they needed was for Lombard's men to take the bait. The night of the sting, the library loomed quiet and dark. Rain pattered softly against the tall arched windows. Anna sat at one of the long oak tables, clutching a manila folder filled with nothing but blank papers. Her hands trembled. Every sound, the tick of the old clock, the hum of the fluorescent lights, felt magnified. Marquez's voice came through the tiny earpiece in her ear. "You're doing great, Anna. We're watching every exit. Just stay calm." Anna swallowed hard, glancing toward the shadowed bookshelves. "What if they don't take the bait?" "They will," Marquez said firmly. "Lombard can't risk you talking." At 11:17 p.m., the library doors creaked open. Two men slipped inside, dressed in dark jackets. Anna recognized one of them instantly: Vince Mallory, Lombard's driver and rumored enforcer. His reputation in Maplewood was one of quiet menace. He rarely spoke, but when he did, people listened. The other man Anna didn't recognize, but the gun bulging under his coat spoke volumes. "Miss Hart," Vince said, his voice low and steady. "Mr. Lombard sent us to collect what you found. Best you hand it over quietly." Anna's throat tightened. She forced herself to slide the folder across the table. "This is all I have." The second man reached for it. But before his fingers touched the paper, red dots from sniper lasers appeared on both men's chests. "Police!" Marquez's voice boomed as officers swarmed from the shadows. "Drop your weapons." Chaos erupted. The second man drew his gun, but O'Connor tackled him to the ground before he could fire. Vince, however, stayed eerily calm, his hands raised. "You've made a mistake," he said coolly. "I was just here for some reading material." Back at the station, under harsh fluorescent lights, Vince Mallory finally broke his silence. "You think this ends with me?" he said, smirking at Marquez. "I'm nothing but a driver. Lombard's already 2 steps ahead. He doesn't leave trails. You'll never touch him." But then he leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Off the record? He doesn't trust his men anymore. Not after that article. He keeps everything close now in a private ledger. If you get your hands on that, maybe you'll have something." Marquez's eyes narrowed. "And where is this ledger?" Vince chuckled. "You didn't hear it from me. But Lombard's office safe at the estate? It's not as secure as he thinks." Anna was exhausted when she finally stumbled out of the interrogation room hours later. Her body trembled from the adrenaline crash, but her mind was sharp. She found Marquez waiting by the coffee machine. "So it's real," Anna said softly. "The ledger. That's what Emily must have found." Marquez nodded. "If we can get it, it'll be the nail in Lombard's coffin. But we'll need a warrant, and the DA won't risk going after a man like him without undeniable cause." Anna thought of her sister's smile, of the spray-painted threat on her wall, of the fear that had hung over Maplewood like a choking fog for too long. "Then we don't wait for the DA," Anna whispered fiercely. "We take it ourselves." Marquez studied her, torn between the duty to protect her witness and the fire in Anna's eyes. "Finally," she sighed. "If we do this, it has to be clean. No room for mistakes. Because if Lombard catches us before we find that ledger, he'll kill us both," Anna finished. They locked eyes, and for the first time, Anna didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a soldier preparing for battle. The trap had worked, but it had only opened the door to a far more dangerous game. And as dawn broke over Maplewood, Anna and Marquez knew the final confrontation with Richard Lombard was no longer a matter of if. It was a matter of when. The air outside Richard Lombard's estate was heavy with mist. The sprawling mansion sat at the top of a long, winding drive, its windows glowing faintly in the early dawn. To Anna, it looked less like a home and more like a fortress. Detective Marquez crouched beside her behind the tree line. Both women wore dark jackets, and their breath rose in pale clouds as they watched the estate in silence. "This is madness," Marquez whispered, double-checking her firearm. "If anyone spots us, it's over." Anna clutched the flashlight in her trembling hands. "Emily died because of whatever's in that house. I can't walk away now. Not when we're this close." Marquez's eyes softened, then hardened with resolve. "All right. But we do this smart. Quick in, quick out." Breaking in. They moved silently along the hedgerow, bypassing the main gate and slipping through a gap in the iron fence. Marquez led the way, her years of fieldwork evident in every measured step. The back entrance to the mansion was protected by a keypad lock, but Marquez produced a slim set of tools. "Give me a minute." Anna's heart pounded as Marquez worked. Every second stretched into eternity. Then, click. The door swung open with a soft groan. Inside, the estate was suffocatingly lavish mahogany paneling, oil paintings of ancestors who seemed to glare disapprovingly. The air smelled faintly of cigar smoke and expensive leather. "Safe's in his study," Marquez whispered. "Second floor, end of the hall." They crept up the staircase, every creak of the steps echoing like thunder in Anna's ears. The study was cavernous, lined with shelves of law books and framed certificates. In the corner, behind a massive oak desk, sat a steel safe. Marquez knelt before it, pressing her ear against the cold metal as she spun the dial. "Keep watch," she murmured. Anna paced nervously by the window, peering out at the sweeping driveway below. The mansion grounds were eerily still. Then a soft click. The safe door swung open. Inside, among stacks of cash and sealed envelopes, lay a leather-bound ledger. Its pages were filled with names, dates, and transactions. Payments to judges, bribes to police officers, coded entries that tied Lombard directly to multiple disappearances including Emily Hart's. Anna's breath caught. "This is it. This proves everything." Marquez carefully snapped photos with her phone. "With this, the DA won't just take him down. They'll dismantle his entire empire." But before she could close the safe, a voice cut through the silence. Face to face. Well, Richard Lombard drawled from the doorway, a pistol gleaming in his hand. "I expected rats. I didn't expect you." Anna froze, her stomach plummeting. Marquez slowly raised her hands, stepping between Lombard and Anna. "You're finished, Richard," Marquez said, her voice steady. "We have everything we need." Lombard smirked. "Do you really think a ledger means anything? I own the courts, the cops, half this miserable town. That book dies with you." He leveled the gun at Anna. "And you should have stayed quiet, Miss Hart. Just like your sister should have." Anna's knees buckled at the words. Rage surged through her fear. "You killed her," she spat. "You had Emily murdered because she wouldn't be part of your corruption." Lombard tilted his head. "Your sister was naive. I offered her a way out. She refused. People who refuse me don't last long." Time slowed. Marquez's eyes flicked to Anna, subtle but urgent. Anna's pulse hammered in her ears. Then, in one desperate motion, she swung the heavy flashlight in her hand. The beam cracked against Lombard's wrist, and the gun clattered to the floor. Marquez lunged, tackling him to the ground. They struggled violently, Lombard's strength surprising even her. Anna grabbed the gun, her hands shaking as she pointed it. "Anna!" Marquez barked, pinning Lombard's arm. "Don't just hold it steady." Sirens wailed in the distance. Marquez must have triggered the silent alarm when she opened the safe. Lombard snarled up at Anna, his face twisted with fury. "You don't have the guts." For a heartbeat, Anna considered pulling the trigger. For Emily. For the fear this man had inflicted on her town. But as tears streamed down her cheeks, she shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I'm not like you." Moments later, uniformed officers stormed the room, dragging Lombard away in handcuffs. The ledger was secured as evidence. Within days, Lombard's empire crumbled, judges recused, officers suspended, politicians scrambling to distance themselves. The name that once ruled Maplewood with fear became synonymous with downfall. At Emily's memorial service, Anna stood before a packed church, the ledger displayed beside her sister's photograph. Emily believed in truth, Anna said, her voice trembling but strong. She believed one voice could break through the silence of corruption. She gave her life for that belief. And today, I promise we won't let her be forgotten. The townspeople rose to their feet, not in mourning alone, but in solidarity. The silence that had haunted Maplewood for so long was finally broken. Weeks later, Anna sat on her porch, the autumn breeze rustling through the trees. Marquez stopped by, a tired but satisfied smile on her face. "You did good, Anna," she said. "Emily would be proud." Anna looked at the horizon, the weight of grief still heavy, but no longer suffocating. "I didn't do it alone. And maybe Maplewood has a chance now." Marquez nodded. "It does. Because of you." For the first time since Emily's disappearance, Anna felt something like peace. And though the scars of loss would never fully heal, she knew her sister's voice, her courage, her truth would echo through Maplewood forever.